And good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us today. Hello, hello. Welcome. All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us today. My name is Sachka Oates, and I work as a technical assistance consultant for the American Institutes for Research, and I coordinate regional trainings as well as research forum webinars for CalPro. And we also have Josie Cleveland from AIR and CalPro here providing technical support. Today's webinar topic is promoting positive math identities and productive struggle. We are joined by our content expert, Dr. Matt Wallace. Welcome, everyone. All right, and Dr. Wallace is an associate professor of teaching in education in UC Davis School of Education, and he teaches courses in teacher inquiry for graduate students, credential courses for secondary mathematics teacher candidates, and undergraduate courses for future math and science teachers. His research and teaching interests include formative assessment, equitable mathematics, classroom practices, teacher learning, and race and ethnicity in education. Prior to coming to UC Davis, Dr. Wallace taught high school and middle school mathematics in California public schools and worked as a lecturer supervisor at UC Berkeley and CSU East Bay. He has also served as the director of Math for America Berkeley. That's a professional development program for secondary math and science teachers. And Dr. Wallace also served as a math education specialist for the Capital Adult Education Regional Consortium, or CAREC. Welcome again, everyone. Thank you for joining us. And before I pass it over to Dr. Wallace, I would like to now ask Josie Cleveland to provide quick housekeeping for this webinar.
Hi, everyone. Thank you all for joining today's webinar. We're very excited about today's event. Like Sachiko mentioned, I'm Josie Cleveland, and I'm here with CalPro to help with any technical support that you might need today. So if you encounter any Zoom issues during today's webinar, you have any questions about our tech and everything else, I'm happy to help. You can email me at jcleveland@air.org, or you can give our office a call. This notice here that you see on the screen is just letting you know what you might have seen when you popped into this meeting, is that we are recording this meeting for the purposes of being able to provide it to those who weren't able to join live. And this video will live on our YouTube channel. If that is all I have, so I'm going to hand it over to Matt to get today's webinar started.
All right, thank you, and happy Monday, everyone. Welcome. So good to have all of you here today. So as the title reads, promoting positive math identities and productive struggle. We'll spend most of our time on positive math identities, if it's okay with you, although we'll touch on productive struggle, and I'll have a little bit more to say about that at the end. Before we begin, however, I would like to set a goal for us today, but also after today, after our time today, to step outside of our comfort zone. And I mean that in a good way, because I really think that's where a lot of our learning happens. And there's lots of different ways to step out. There's lots of different ways to step outside of your comfort zone. For some of you, maybe the ideas we're going to be talking about this afternoon are brand new, or maybe things you haven't really spent a whole lot of time considering. So stepping outside of your comfort zone might just mean entertaining these ideas a little bit longer, or really considering how you might try out some of these ideas with the students you work with. Or maybe for those of you who are familiar with some of the things we're going to be talking about today, maybe stepping outside of your comfort zone is thinking about how you can refine some of these things in your own practices. Or maybe you're already doing everything that we're talking about today, in which case maybe stepping outside of your comfort zone is working with colleagues or others in order to get them to maybe start thinking about or implementing some of these things in a real and authentic way. Whatever stepping outside of your comfort zone looks like for you, your students are going to be the benefits of that work and that learning. And that's what I'd argue is perhaps most important. Okay, So with that goal in mind, I have three things for you: a problem, a question, and a story. We'll go through each one of these in turn. Let's start with a problem. I'm going to invite you to do some math. I hope that's okay. Here we have a friend, Abby, and Abby is making a movie, and Abby is filming a dinner scene and for this movie, and there are two candles on the table. They're the same length. One candle, when lit, takes 9 hours to burn out. The other candle takes 6 hours to burn out. So if they're lit at the exact same time and the exact same, and they have the exact same length, one takes 9 hours, one takes 6 hours. The question for all of you is, how many hours will it take for one candle to be exactly twice the length of the other? So I'm not going to give you a whole bunch of time to work on this, but I would like to ask you to spend some time, and you may or may not get to an answer. That's okay. We only have an hour together. But I will like to ask you now to take a moment to think about and perhaps even get started working on this problem. And we'll take about 3 minutes, and I think we'll set a timer so that you can have some quiet time to work independently, and I'll mute myself. Nothing's wrong with the audio. Just want to give you some independent think time, and we'll come back in about 3 minutes. All right, giving everyone a 1 minute warning. 1 minute warning. And again, the goal is not to get an answer. It's just to spend some time thinking and working on this problem. It is absolutely okay if you don't get to a conclusion in 60 seconds or less. That music. Uh, I'm going to share the answer. So spoiler alert. If you don't want to know the answer, look away. I'm not going to say it out loud, but I'm going to share it now. So if you don't want to know what the answer is, turn away and I'll tell you when you can look back. If you do want to know the answer, here it is. All right, but again, this is not the goal of it. It was really just to get you to think about it for a little bit of time. All right, you can look back now if you were looking away, and you can continue working on it later. Now we're going to change gears to a question. And the question I have for all of you now, and I'd like to invite you to write in the chat, what are 3 words that you associate with struggle? So please, in the chat, take a moment to think about when you hear the word struggle, what are some words that resonate with you? And please share those words in the chat. All right, math, math, and math. Pain, frustration, obstacle, challenge, difficulty, hard, exhausting, anxiety, frustration. Thank you all for writing these in. These are great. Unknown, confusion, tenacity, and more confusion, difficult, frustration, mind block. Yeah, these are great. Keep them coming. And as they're coming in, another question for you to consider, not necessarily write in the chat. If you were to go back and look at all these words, whether I've read them aloud or not, how many of the words that you see are positive? So here's some things to think about, or here's what we know about with struggle. One is that struggle is often perceived as bad, as evidenced by a lot of the words that you all are using in the chat. And it's often considered a lack of success. If things were going well, if we knew what we were doing, we wouldn't be struggling. Things would be the opposite of that. We'd be arriving at our destination. We'd be finding answers. We'd come to conclusions without any of the things that you were mentioning, the frustration, the feelings of overwhelmness, and so forth. We also know that struggle conflicts with our notions of successful teaching, right? If our students are struggling, maybe our explanations weren't clear enough, or maybe we didn't support or help our students enough. Something must be wrong, because if we'd done our job as teachers, our students would not be feeling any struggle right now. This happens so much that oftentimes when our students are struggling, teachers will jump in, try to save our students, remove that struggle so our students can continue on successfully without the pain, without the frustration, without all the things that you might have mentioned earlier. This happens so much, in fact, it has a name. It goes a little something like this. You might give your students a problem, like, I don't know, a candle problem, where there's both length and you light them at the same time, and you want to find out when one is going to be exactly double the length of the other one. And your student might say, I don't know what to do. I need help. And then as teachers, you might run in and we proceed to ask a series of questions. Like, well, first, what happens if we were to write each of these candles as fractions? And let's start with the first hour, and one is 9/9 and one's a 6/6. And then each hour goes by and we can know exactly how much or how much remains for each of our candles. And then what happens if we look at each hour, and what happens each hour? And then if we go back and see the differences in lengths, we can see exactly when one is twice the length of the other. This happens a lot. It's so much, it's called funneling. And that occurs when our students ask for our help, and we jump in and ask a series of questions that funnel students directly to the answer in the path that we want them or hope that they would take. In other words, we lay out a bunch of stepping stones and give them a direct path from where they are to where we want them to be, with as little struggle or resistance as possible. So this thing is called funneling, and it has, well, it's an example of one of two things. Some people call it a didactic contract. Other people might call it a universal helping interaction, but it rewards being helpless. The ticket to entry is not knowing what to do. And then we as teachers, we come in and we remove the struggle. We remove some of these negative experiences our students were having so they can successfully complete whatever it is that we've asked them to complete. Some other things we know about struggle is that we try to avoid it, right? As teachers, we come up with not lots of nice tips or tricks or things that our students can do so they don't necessarily have to experience any struggle. Maybe you've seen a couple of these things, or maybe even you shared some of these tips or tricks with some of your students, whether we call it things like foil or keep flip chains or PEMDAS or please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. All these nice little things are done or designed to really save our students from struggle so that they don't necessarily have to experience any of that. They can just follow these guides and quickly get an answer pain-free. But we also know about struggle that it's actually a good thing. In fact, struggle and mistakes are really an indication that we're learning. And many people argue that it's a necessary component of learning. One thing I often share with my students is that learning is never intended to be easy, but it is intended to be rewarding. And any of you who may have experienced this, where you've had to work hard, really hard to try to learn something, to make sense of something, you know that that experience may have come with some frustration. It might have come with some challenges or some struggle, some difficulties. But you also know that once you finally reach that moment, you had that breakthrough, you finally had that aha moment, the reward is that no one can take that away from you. You now have that new learning, those new insights, this new understandings that you didn't have before. And there's nothing anyone can do or take that from you. That's yours. That's your reward. We also know that teaching, when we embrace struggle and really promote struggle in the classroom, there's lots of long-term benefits to our students, beyond just the classroom. You don't have to take my word for it, though. In the chat, there's going to be a link to an article that really elaborates on a lot of the things I just mentioned, and even more. And while there's not going to be an opportunity to read this link now, I really encourage you to click on the link, bookmark it, have it as an open tab, and then hopefully later today, when you have some spare time, you'll go back and take a moment. It's hopefully a quick read. You'll get a chance to read and really remember, remind yourself, and maybe even come to a better understanding about why struggle is so important and a necessary part of learning. So moving on, here's the story. So not too long ago, I was working with a number of teachers, and I wasn't the lead teacher, but I had opportunities to co-teach in these classrooms. This is a high school classroom I was in. And there was a student named Tomas, who I grew very fond of and had a chance to work very closely with. And one of the things I noticed when working with Tomas is that when Tomas was given problems, like a candle task, Tomas would say things like, well, I don't want to try doing this. I really don't feel like doing the work. And in future conversation or later conversations with Tomas, Tomas went on to share they didn't really think of himself as a math person. He said, I'm not much of a math person because I'm just too stupid to understand math. So he was avoiding working on tasks, and he called himself too stupid to understand what was going on. And I think this quote here really speaks to what was happening here. So students who lack confidence in mathematics often give up too quickly because they mistakenly believe that struggle means that they are not smart. Because they fear being exposed, they are less willing to work on, ask, or answer questions. I think another quote that really just speaks to all of this too. Unfortunately, we are led to believe that struggle in mathematics is a sign that we are somehow less capable of learning math, or that struggle is, quote, wrong. We internalize our struggles and begin to overlook or undervalue our potential. We allow our struggles to define our mathematical potential and fixate on what we cannot do. So very much like I think what a lot of you mentioned in the chat, Tomas was having these same sort of thoughts and feelings about struggle. It wasn't a good thing, and it wasn't something that he really desired or wanted to. He didn't want those feelings, and he was concluding because he was struggling a lot that math was just not his thing. He was not a math person at all. So math identity, I want to talk with you quickly about math identity. So math identity, it really just involves how people see themselves and how others see you as mathematicians. You can think of it as some students have productive or positive math identities, in which case they might see themselves as capable math learners and competent doers of mathematics. But you also might have students who don't have those sorts of feelings. They might have negative or unproductive math identities, in which case they may not see themselves as capable learners. They might not see themselves as math people at all. And math identity is a predictor of a lot of things. It's a predictor of, one predictor anyways, of how students participate when they're working on tasks, math tasks, or even participating in class, how well they engage in class, even including their achievement, and also their interest in pursuing STEM majors, STEM courses, and STEM careers, even after working with us. Importantly, there's lots of different things to shape one's math identity. Some of them are going to be positive, some are going to be negative, and it's not just one thing that's really going to shape one's math identity. As a matter of fact, it's fluid and it's changing all the time. So why is this important? Well, Tomas's comments are really a window into his math identity, and they suggest that he has an unproductive or a negative math identity. He does not identify as a math person. And that has long and lasting impacts. So let's say you have a student who has a positive math identity. They say, well, I am good at math. Or maybe they give quotes like, math is one of my favorite subjects. Or I'm really good at doing math. I'm really good at solving math problems. All indications that someone might have a positive or productive math identity. Well, what happens when you give them a math task, like a candle task, for example? They might be more willing to engage in the task. They're more interested in trying it. They're willing to stick with it longer. They might be okay with the struggle. And what happens when you spend time doing math? Well, you actually get better at it. So you're gonna develop problem-solving skills. You're gonna develop some more confidence in math. You're gonna learn a whole lot more about math just because you're spending time thinking about it. You're spending time doing it. And what happens when you work on math? You spend a lot of time doing it. You become good at it. Well, you get lots of good indications. Improved performance. You're likely to do well when you're given math tests, math quizzes, things that ask you to put these skills to work. And that, of course, reinforces one's positive math identity. So it's just an ongoing thing. Contrast that with a student who might have a negative math identity. Kind of like Tomas. You might say, I'm so bad at math. Or maybe I'm not a math person. I'm too stupid to understand math. Math is just not my thing. All indications of someone who has a negative math identity. Well, what happens when students have a negative or unproductive math identity? They're more inclined to avoid math tasks. So given the same sort of candle task, they might pull out their phone and check their social media feeds, or maybe they start looking around the room and thinking about other things to do besides working on the math. In my experience in high school, these are the students who might ask to go to the bathroom right away, rather than spend some time working on tasks. Or maybe they get up to sharpen their pencil, but it takes about 8 minutes to do it. Or maybe they don't have a writing utensil, so they're coming up with lots of different things to avoid actually engaging in the task. And what happens when you don't do the work, when you're avoiding it, you're coming up with things, reasons to not actually engage in the math? Well, you're less likely to be prepared. You're not going to develop stronger math skills. You're not going to develop more better understanding of procedures. You're less inclined to really develop the skills to cope with struggling, or develop the confidence and know that struggle is going to be just part of the process, and you can persevere through the struggle. And what happens when you do less math and you're less prepared? Well, you get indications that maybe you weren't prepared, like lower math grades, not necessarily enough, but not as solid of grades or markings or indications or signs that you might have hoped. And all that, of course, feeds into one's negative math identity. So this is, again, an ongoing cycle with, if not disrupted, has lots of unfortunate consequences. So there's lots of evidence that says that the things that we do impacts our students, not just for the short term, but for lifespans. We also know that math identity is a critical component in framing our knowledge, our skills, our habits, our attitudes, our beliefs, and relationships that we need to be successful math learners. So it's not just about helping our students, pushing content, helping our students understand the procedures, helping our students develop number sense, maybe support our students have conceptual understanding. But we also want to help our students come to see themselves as legitimate and powerful doers of mathematics. We want to make sure that our students, maybe they don't want to pursue a career in STEM, but they know that they can, and they know that they are a math person. And if they wanted to pursue math, or if they were given a math problem, they wouldn't avoid it. They know that it's something that they can do, and they're capable of doing that if they wanted to dedicate the time to do so. So I want to take a moment now that we've just spent a few moments talking about math identity, and give you a chance just to think in your own words, how would you describe math identity? And why do you think that might be important? And while you don't have to put anything in the chat, you are certainly welcome to do so. So I'm just going to mute myself for a minute or two and give you a chance to really just think about and try to solidify some of these ideas for yourself. Yeah, thank you to those who are putting things in the chat. Sorry, I should have mentioned earlier that feel free to use the chat at any time to pose questions or comments and things. And I confess that my Zoom skills are not what they once were during the pandemic, but they're okay. So I'll do my best to manage the chat as things come in. And we will also have time at the end for questions and answers. So you're welcome to put your questions in the chat now, or you're welcome to hang on to them to the end, and I'll be glad to try to answer them for you. Okay, so thanks again to everyone who is already writing in the chat. Please continue to do so. And let's move on. So now, thinking about math identity, we want to think about what are some ways we might be able to promote positive math identities. Now, ideally, all of our students have these positive math identities, and they all come in thinking that they can do math. But I know that this isn't an ideal world, and you might find yourself working with students who don't think of themselves as mathematicians or as competent, capable math learners. Maybe even you identify that way yourself. So I'm going to share with you some ideas about how we as teachers can work with students to try to change that, try to disrupt that pattern and help our students really come to see themselves in a very different way. There is a book. It was written about 10 years ago, but it just recently was republished with some new content entitled The Impact of Identity in K-8 Mathematics. And while I recognize that all of us here are probably not K-8 teachers, I will say that a lot of the ideas in this book transfer well beyond the grades that they have listed here in the title. So whatever age or grade that you happen to be working with, I think this is a wonderful book and highly recommend it if you have an opportunity to read it, because again, a lot of the things are very transferable in lots of different contexts with lots of different age and grades. And one of the things they share in this book are what they call these equity-based math teaching practices, which are really about different ways that we as teachers can promote positive math identities in working with our students. And while we don't have time today to go through all 5 of these, if I could zoom out and try to talk about what all 5 of these things are doing all at once, the goal is really to help our students develop a positive relationship with math. How can we as teachers help our students have a good working relationship, a good positive relationship with math? They see math as something that a partner that they want to spend time hanging out with, a partner that they like, a partner they enjoy, a partner that brings them joy. So here are some ideas about we can help our students have that positive relationship with math. One thing we can do is we want to spend some time redefining mathematical success or mathematical smartness. Oftentimes in the classroom, we as teachers and students consider success in math about getting a right answer, or even better, getting a right answer quickly. And while that is certainly one way to be successful in math or one way to be smart in math, it is not the only way to be smart in math. Think of that. If you're in a relationship and your partner you're really good, you do a lot of things, but your partner only wants one thing, only wants a right answer. And despite all the energy and all the things you can offer, your partner says, nah, that's not good enough. Of course you wouldn't have a good relationship with that thing. Now, the same is true for math. The good news is there are lots of different ways that one can be mathematically smart, well beyond getting a right answer or mastering an algorithm. And these are just some of the ways. These are not all the ways, but this is maybe a starter kit I'd like to offer up to all of you about different ways that we can demonstrate our own mathematical success and our own mathematical smartness. It might not be getting the right answer, but maybe it's about showing our thinking. Maybe we draw a picture, or maybe we draw a diagram. Some people call that a mathematical model. Or maybe we try out ideas or test conjectures. Maybe we're making connections between lots of different things. A lot of people argue that's really important for conceptual understanding. And I can go on and on. And again, this isn't an exhaustive list, but these are a number of different ways that we all can be mathematically smart. And these aren't me, this isn't just me coming up with a bunch of ideas about how we can be mathematically smart. All these ideas are connected to the math practices. So in a very real way, all of these things are skills or behaviors that we should be engaging in our students already. So I'm not asking you to stretch or try to make math up on your own, but rather really think about what these math practices are about and the different ways that our students might be demonstrating these math practices. As we want to share this information with our students and let them realize that beyond just the right answer, there's lots of different ways that we can be mathematically smart. I'd like to start with you by asking all of you, or sorry, before we get there, excuse me, here's an example of a way a student can represent their smartness. So here's an example where a student was asked to find the slope of a line. And you can see here that this student, while they did not ever find the slope of the line, the student did plot 2 points, the 2 points that were listed, and they drew a line between them. So if we're thinking about ways to be smart, the student did not get a right answer, but they did a lot of good work here. And it's important to acknowledge that. One of the things you could point out is the student did a great job of representing or showing their thinking. So now I'll invite you to take a moment to think about the ways that you were working on the candle problem. And like I said, you may not have gotten to an answer with a candle problem. I didn't even give you a chance to. But I bet, I'm willing to wager that you demonstrated your mathematical smartness anyway. So I'm going to give yourself a moment to go back and look at your work and think about how you might have already demonstrated your mathematical smartness in working on this problem. And one of the things that's not on here, but just thinking about it now, one of the ways you might have done it is by taking a risk. You might have tried to do this in ways that you might not have otherwise been willing to. Maybe you decided to put yourself out there and try something when you maybe weren't quite sure of what to do. And learning takes a lot of intellectual risk taking. So I'd add that to the list too. So I'll give you a moment, take a look at this list and think about, how did I demonstrate my mathematical smartness? I should say, feel free to share it in the chat if you like, though not required. So if we zoom out and we think about being mathematically smart or being mathematically successful as beyond just, yeah, thank you for sought out resources. That's great. And breaking down big things into smaller steps. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing. If we zoom out and think about lots of different ways that we can be mathematically smart, it's really important that we let our students know that these are things that we value. So one of the ways we can do that is by really just bringing attention to it, drawing attention to the ways that our students are demonstrating their smartness. So rather than just celebrate the right answer, we really want to take a moment to celebrate our students in all the different ways they might have been demonstrating their mathematical smartness and their mathematical success, because it's more than just a right answer. And if you need help, here is a sentence frame that you can use. And I invite you to use it as frequently as possible with your students in order to really help them redefine what counts as mathematical smartness, what counts as mathematical success. So what I mean by that is, let's say that back to this slope question, if you see a student who is trying to find the slope and they plot these points, you can say, well, I think it was really smart that Matt represented his thinking on this problem by plotting the points and drawing a line. And I think that was really smart because representing your thinking really gives us a real clear insight into how you're thinking about this problem. And that's important for math because part of math is being able to really articulate your thinking or justify your thinking. This is one of the ways that we can do that. In addition to that, this quote, I'm not going to read this out loud, but I think this quote really gets at why doing something like this is so powerful. And I'm going to skip the beginning part is essentially is talking about how a person just really highlights what a student is up to. And towards the end, you can see that it says the very last sentence, he raised the status of Ivan's contribution, which would almost certainly have been lost without such an intervention. Ivan visibly straightened up and leaned forward as the teacher reminded the girls of his idea. So in this thing, Ivan is feeling like, yeah, he's feeling good about himself. He's feeling proud because the teacher really just brought attention to the ways that he was demonstrating his mathematical smartness. And it really allowed the student to realize that I do have something to offer. I am valued here. And some of the things I do, though I might not have a right answer, I do have things that I can contribute because I am a capable mathematics learner. Moving forward, other things we can do is we want to identify our students' strengths and then incorporate those strengths into things that we're doing in the classroom. So again, we can use this as kind of like a starter kit. I encourage you to the next time you're working with students and they're working on a problem to just look and use this as sort of like a checklist to see how are your students demonstrating their mathematical smartness. What are some of the things that they might be doing? Resist the urge to look at the answers. Resist your urge to see if they're getting on the right track. Really just look at what are they doing? What are some of the things that they're doing right now? And how are they demonstrating their mathematical smartness? And then once you've identified those strengths, you want to incorporate them into activities so that students can use what they have to gain what they don't. So what I mean by that is, let's say one of your student strengths is drawing their thinking. Then maybe what you want to do is when you start off giving your students problems, hey, let's draw a picture about this. Why don't you draw a picture that represents what's going on here? Or let's do this together. Let's draw a picture so that students can use that strength to make sense of whatever it is that you happen to be teaching them, whether it's about fractions or even about a candle problem where they're lit at the same time and one's going to burn faster than the other. Drawing a picture can really give them access to whatever you're teaching in ways that without that strength, they might not necessarily be able to grasp or understand. Or let's say you have a student whose strength is making a list or a table. Again, anytime you can, you want to have or give your students opportunities to use a list, make a table, put whatever data or information you can in an organized way into a table to help them make sense of whatever it is that you happen to be teaching, so that students can use what they have to gain what they don't. Just one more example here. If your students are really good at listening to other people and then restating other people's thinking, then maybe you don't start from scratch with a blank question, but maybe you give your students a completely worked out example and then ask them to try to make sense of it and see if they can summarize or restate what's going on in their own words. Or maybe you say everything first, then you ask them, hey, can you just repeat in your own words what just happened here? Again, giving your students opportunity to use their strengths so they have access to whatever it is you happen to be teaching or working with them on. All right, another thing we really want to do is we want to spend some time to reframe our mistakes and struggles as natural learning opportunities. What we want to do is we want to normalize mistakes and struggle, help our students understand that this is a natural, normal part of the learning process, not something to avoid, not something to be afraid of, but really embrace the fact that this is a natural part of learning. And working through this is really going to lead to some rewarding experiences for our students. So one of the things we need to do in order to reframe mistakes and struggle, well, a couple things teachers do is just highlight the fact that students are making mistakes and make it, I don't know, shall we say, cool. So this is one of the teachers that I worked with who really spent a lot of time trying to do just that, reframe mistakes and struggle. And so at the end of every week, this teacher would give out the coolest mistake award in class. And so the idea is just to acknowledge that we're all making mistakes. And the one that was really cool this week was this student, and here's the reason why I thought it was cool. And oftentimes it really was just about you making this mistake allowed us to have a conversation or come to some better understandings about these things. So thank you for that, because your mistake really allowed all of us in the class, or just whoever we're working with, to really have a better understanding. Here's just another example. This comes from a classroom, excuse me, where the teacher tried to define for students what struggle and mistakes looks and sounds like. So if you're looking on the left, you can see the teacher is talking about productive struggle looks and sounds like being stuck or confused, but not getting frustrated, not giving up, working long and hard to figure something out, using resources, asking questions and seeking help, but not just answers, or just trying things out, trial and error. Maybe it's guess and check. And so by doing this, the teacher really was just hoping that students could see or get a better understanding of, hey, if you're doing these things, you're productive struggling. You might not have known that's what productive struggle looked like. You might not have known that's what it sounded like, but let me define it for you. So now that when I see it, I can point it out. Hey, you're doing exactly this thing right here. That's great. You are engaging in productive struggle right now. Keep it up, and you're really going to come to some genuine understandings. Same thing for mistakes. Asking yourself, hey, how did I get that? Hey, I see what I did. Oh, I got it. I see what happened. Revising your strategy or trying something new to address a mistake. Oh, okay, let me see if I can fix this. Asking yourself, why did I make that mistake? And what do I need to do to remember, or what do I want to remember to do the same and different the next time I see a problem like this? So again, really just trying to help students have a better understanding of what it looks like or what it sounds like when they're making mistakes, so that your students know, oh, this is what I should be doing when I make a mistake, or and this is natural and this is to be expected. And if I'm doing these sorts of things, then I'm on the right track. Other things we can do is with our students, don't just try to fix a mistake, but really spend some time reflecting on the mistake with our students. So mistakes are bound to happen. They're inevitable. Anyone who's doing math is going to make some mistakes at some point in their lifetime. And rather than just go up and try to clean it up and say, oh, here's your mistake, let's fix it, and then you got the right answer, great. After it's fixed, spend some time just thinking about that mistake with your student. Here's an example. So let's say we have a student who's working on solving an equation. It's not right. It looks like the student just ignored the equal sign and decided to combine like terms all over the place and then decided to solve for X. So not what we wanted the students to do. And you might find yourself as a teacher going in to help your student arrive at the right answer. But then after that, you want to spend some time with the student. Hey, let's think about what just happened here. What did you do well, and what went wrong? Why do you think it went wrong? Or why didn't it work? And what are some things you want to remember now that we've done this, now that you've had that experience? What are some things you want to remember so that the next time you're solving an equation like this one, you don't make the same mistake again? Really spend some time with that student after the fact to help your students learn from their mistake, not just fix the mistake. Here are some other questions you might want to consider asking your students when they're making mistakes. And you don't necessarily have to always engage in the conversation. You can pose this question and then leave and give them some reflection time on their own. You can talk through these questions with your students. You can model for your students these sorts of things. So that when you make mistakes, because I don't know about you, but anytime I'm explaining some things, I'm bound to make a mistake here or there. I'll take a moment and just sort of model for that student how I've thinking about and learning from that mistake, so that hopefully I won't continue to make that same mistake over and over and over again. So some of these questions here you see, well, I mentioned the first one. You might ask yourself, well, what do I understand and what do I not quite understand yet? What are some things I might be able to do to better understand what I'm learning right now? Or what did I do correctly? What did I not do correctly? And how does that compare with the right answer? Let me compare and contrast what I did with what I should have done, so that I can get an idea about where the mistake lived, and how I might be able to think differently in the future. Or like the last question here, when I do something like this again, what are some things I want to remember to do the same? But then what are those things I don't remember to do differently? In addition to that, another thing you want to do is address the negative self-talk. So you might remember Tomas earlier was saying, I don't want to do this. I don't want to try. I'm too stupid to understand math. And you might find yourself hearing students say these sorts of things, either out loud or sort of to a neighbor. And in those moments, you don't want to let those slide. You don't want to let it pass. These are moments you really want to take a moment to help your student address the inner critic inside them. We all have that inner critic. We all have that voice in our head who's telling us, just don't do this thing. Maybe you're better off doing this other thing. But we want to make sure that we don't just give that person or that negative inner critic space in our head rent free. So one of the things we want to do is we want to give it a name. We want to humanize this thing so that we can talk to it. So next time you hear a student say something like, oh man, I can't do this. I'm not a good math person. Give that inner critic a name. In this case, we'll call it Jeff. And say, oh, here comes Jeff. Jeff is trying to spread that negative energy. And I did this with actually, I have two kids, and this worked really well with my daughter because she had in kindergarten a frenemy. So we decided to name this inner critic the same name as her frenemy. And so every time this inner critic came up and we started talking negatively and saying, you can't do this, you can't do that, up, here comes that Jeff, always bringing that negative energy. And now it has a name, now that we can talk to it. So after we give it a name, one thing we can do is give it time limits. So the next time you hear someone say, oh, I can't do this, here comes Jeff again. Jeff has that negative energy. All right, Jeff, you got 2 minutes, then you got to go. That's it. You can only stick around for 2 minutes, Jeff, and then we got some positive things we need to do. You clearly aren't the positive person we need right now. So Jeff, 2 minutes, then you're gone. Give your student that 2 minutes, and then come back after 2 minutes. And then let's get back to work. And then we want to challenge that inner critic. So we've given it a name, we've given it time limits, and now when it comes up, even before we give it that time limit, let's go ahead and challenge why this inner critic is even here. So someone says, oh, I can't do this, I'm not a math person. Hey, here comes Jeff again. But you know what, Jeff? It's important to note that what you're working on now is probably going to take some time and effort, and that's natural. Actually, it's an important part of learning. So I don't know what Jeff is talking about. So let's just forget about Jeff, and what can we do? What's going to help you figure this out? And this is a great opportunity in these moments to remind your students of their strengths. So you might say, hey, I know that you're really good at drawing pictures. Why don't we start there? Why don't you draw a picture of what's going on here? Or you know what? I think you're really good about asking questions. Maybe, do you want to ask me some questions right now? Are you really good at making tables or lists? Why don't we start there? Let's see if we can make a table. Give your students opportunities really to address that inner critic and then bring it up again. See, Jeff was wrong all the time. Jeff is not somebody who deserves to be around here. But once we give that inner critic a name, it allows us to talk to it, humanize it, and tell it to get away so that we can move on. And this is, I should say that while this is the teacher who's bringing this up, hopefully one of the things that we'll be modeling for our students is over time how they can talk to their inner critics themselves. So while we might need to point it out early on, over time, hopefully we go away and our students might still have that inner critic who's in their head, and they can do these same sorts of things, and they can name it themselves and tell it to go away, give their own self a pep talk, and doing the things that they know they can do, because they are in fact capable and confident mathematicians. Just sort of zooming out again, here are 4 different ways that we can really work to promote positive math identities with our students. So we want to make sure that our students realize that, yes, right answers are an important part of math, but they're not the only part of math. There's lots of different things that are important in math, and right answers is just one of them. There's lots of different ways to be mathematically smart, and we want to help our students understand all those different ways. And it's not just us coming up with our own things. But really, it's all tied to a lot of the math practices that we're already supposed to be engaging our students in anyway. We want to help our students by using those strengths. So incorporating those strengths into all the tasks and activities that they can do. So again, they can use what they have to gain what they don't. We also want to make sure that we reframe mistakes as natural learning opportunities, so that our students are really learning and seeing mistakes not as a bad thing, but as something that just happens, but you can learn from it. And it's really important that you learn from it. And many people say that making those mistakes is the best time that you can learn. And then we want to address that inner critic, because we all have it, but sometimes they take up too much of our headspace. And we want to make sure that we're able to address it and tell this inner critic it's time to go. Importantly, one of the things that's not up here is trying to make things easier for our students, is giving our students tasks that are watered down or oversimplified because we're afraid that they might struggle, or we're worried that they might have some mistakes, or they might have some of the feelings that come with struggling. So I definitely am not saying if your takeaway today is I just need to make things easier for my students. And that's not what I'm saying at all. What I am saying is that struggle is natural and normal, and rather than run from it, you want to give your students more opportunities to engage in it, just with the appropriate support, so that they realize that it's a natural thing, that there's lots of different ways as they're struggling to use their strengths, that when they make those mistakes, it's really the best time for them to be learning, and that while they're working, if something gets in their head that tells them they can't do it, to tell that thing that they got to go, because they are capable, they are competent, and they can do math. All right. So how are we going to promote positive math identities with students? We just want to help our students have a positive relationship with math. And it could be those 4 things. It could be other things. But really, we just want to make sure that our students are, in fact, having that good relationship, so they feel like, yeah, I can do this. I am a math person. I enjoy math. I can do these things. Want to revisit the story with Tomas. So all the things that I mentioned to you earlier were things that teachers actually tried out. These aren't just me just sort of making things up. So at the end of the year, after working with Tomas, one of the things we noticed is he started regularly working on challenging tasks. So early on, I mentioned that he was not engaged on tasks like the candle task, but towards the end of the year, we would give him those candle tasks and he'd be all for it. Tomas was not afraid. He did not avoid those problems anymore. And he even said later on that making mistakes, it helps you understand math better. And one of my favorite quotes, he said, well, math problems, it used to piss me off because other people could do it, but I couldn't. But it doesn't bother me now because I know I didn't really try back then early on during the class. But now he knows I can do it if I try. So we see a big shift in how he's identifying as a math student, just from some of the things that we mentioned here. And it doesn't happen overnight. It's not something that is a one-time thing and all of a sudden your students are developing these positive math identities, because it took your students a while to have some negative or unproductive math identities. So it's likely going to take a while for them to see themselves in a different light too. But it's worth it, and it's rewarding. So with that said, oh, other things too. Sorry, this is also the class data. For if you're curious to know, we can see that in given a survey asking our students how they feel about challenging problems. So you can see more than half the class feels comfortable or very comfortable. That's a 4 or 3, 4 or 5. And a lot of students felt very comfortable in making mistakes. We can see the bulk of the class actually, well over 60%, felt comfortable or very comfortable in making mistakes in class. So this was large high school classrooms that we're working with. And in this case, multiple periods. I think you can see, I don't know if you can see, but there's over 120 responses in this survey. After thinking about promoting positive math identities, another thing we want to think about is, so how can I also support struggle? So I'm working really hard. I'm trying to get my students to have positive math identities, but they're dealing with the struggle, and I want to make sure that they can succeed. They can persevere through the struggle. And there are two things that we can talk about there. One is we want to create an environment that really supports students in struggling. And it might go without saying, but we also need to give our students opportunities and supports as they engage in that struggle. And while we don't have time to talk about it today, this is maybe a teaser for moving forward. I'm told that in the spring, we'll also have another one of these sessions. We'll talk far more in detail about the two things you see here and maybe even more. So stay tuned if you're interested on other things we can do to support our students as they're struggling while learning and doing math. We'll give you a moment now to reflect, 3 questions rather for you. What are some things that you found interesting today? What might that mean for you in your teaching, and how does that reflect you stepping out of your comfort zone? Because again, that's really where all the learning happens. So I'll mute myself, just give you a moment, 60 seconds maybe, to really reflect on all the things we've talked about. Because I don't know about you, but I feel like it's a lot. So I just want to give you a moment to really try to make sense of things for yourself. And then we'll have a Q&A. All right, I know that wasn't a lot of time, but hopefully give you at least a moment just to reflect and sit with your thoughts for a minute and think about where you are with all this and how to promote a positive math identity, among other things, with your students. So here we are. If you have any questions, comments, insights, anything at all you'd like to share in the chat, I am happy to do my best to respond. And thank you for all those people who have, sorry, there's so many things here. I'm getting caught up. Oh, here are maybe some of the, oh, yes, I see Josie put the questions in there. Great. Stake award. Nice. Yeah, that was really fun. I think a lot of students, importantly, tell them the goal is not to just purposely make mistakes to try to win the award, because that is not where the learning happens. Learning happens when they're really making the mistake and thinking about why they've made the mistakes. But yeah, I think it was a great way to really reframe mistakes in class as something that's worthwhile. Well, I could go on and on. Let's see other. Thank you all for sharing all of your insights. Happy to answer questions too.
Okay. Well, that was, but it's done. Okay.
Someone have a question? Oh, well, I demonstrate the candle problem. Yeah, so you can do it. You can do it in a couple of different ways. I don't want to spoil it for anyone who's doesn't want the answer, but for what it's worth, you can do it with fractions. If you start at 1 hour, so each hour a fraction of the candle is burnt. If it takes 9 hours, you can start at 9/9. If it takes 6 hours, you can start at 6/6. Because that's one full candle, and then each hour you take one away, and you can see when exactly there'll be twice the other one. You can also write an equation if you want. You can organize the information in a table. All this. Oh, look, someone even has an equation up there. Yeah, wonderful. So don't look if you don't want the answer. You don't want someone to give you the answer. Don't look in the chat. But if you do, you can still struggle along and figure it out for yourself, which is perhaps the most important thing anyways. So even if you have the answer, keep working to make sense of it for yourself. All right. I think with that said, I will turn it over for feedback from Josie.
All right. Thank you everyone so much for joining us today. And please take the last few minutes to respond to this survey. We value your feedback, and we use your responses to improve our future presentations. So please respond to those questions on the feedback poll. Josie just put in the link in the chat, or you can scan the QR code here. And we will be following up with an email to share the resources that were shared today, and also with the feedback form. So if you, yeah, thank you, Josie.
Sorry about
Perfect.
that.
Perfect, perfect.
And I'm putting the feedback form link in the chat again.
Thank you,
For
Josie.
you all.
Okay. And please stay tuned for the follow-up webinar on this topic. Probably in the spring, we will let you know when the next math webinar is scheduled. And also we do offer, webinars on different topics throughout the year. So if you haven't signed up for CalPro listserv newsletter services, please do so on our website. All right, thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Wallace, for this fantastic presentation. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Please let us know via this feedback form how it went and any future recommendations or requests. Thank you very much again for joining us. Have a wonderful afternoon.
Yes, thank you, everyone. And there's one more slide too. I don't know if we'll get to it, but if you want to keep the conversation going, if you have other questions, feel free to, maybe it's back. Yeah, there we are. And there's my email address. And I invite you to reach out. I'm happy to continue the conversation, answer questions, or anything else that pops up. I don't know about you, but I'm always one of those people who the questions arrive after I've left the session. I'll click leave on the Zoom link, and then like 5 questions just pop in my head. So if you're anything like me, I get it. And I'm happy to answer your questions later. Whenever that happens. So thank you again, everyone, and all the best with you and all your students and all of your hard work. Keep up the good fight.